If you have ever visited Singapore or even watched travel videos about it, you may have asked yourself this question: are Singaporeans Chinese? It is one of the most common assumptions people make, especially first-time visitors. And to be fair, the confusion is very understandable. You hear Mandarin, you see Chinese food everywhere, and during Chinese New Year, the whole city comes alive with red lanterns and dragon decorations. At a quick glance, it is easy to think Singapore is simply a Chinese country. But the truth is more interesting, more layered, and far less simple than it looks on the surface. Singapore is a mix of cultures, a blend of races, and a country that has built its own identity. So in this video, let's break it down in a clear, simple way that anyone can follow. Chapter 1. Looks and First Impressions. When you first arrive in Singapore, it is easy to assume that many people you see are Chinese. That impression comes from numbers alone, since the majority of the population is ethnically Chinese. But this is also the point where most visitors get the wrong idea. Looking Chinese and being Chinese in the cultural sense are two different things, and Singapore makes that very clear the moment you look closer. Singaporeans do not carry themselves the same way as people from mainland China. Their style, their posture, and even the way they walk through the city have a different rhythm. Singaporeans dress for one thing above everything else: the weather. The heat is intense, the humidity is constant, and the priority becomes comfort, not trend. So you often see light fabrics, simple t-shirts, airy dresses, sandals, and loose casual wear. It is not that they are avoiding fashion, it is simply that practicality comes first. In contrast, Chinese street fashion, especially from big cities like Shanghai or Beijing, tends to be more expressive. You will see luxury bags, bold designs, thick layers for style, and sharp silhouettes that stand out in a crowd. Chinese fashion often announces itself immediately. Singaporean fashion blends quietly into the day. Because of this, you can usually tell the difference between a Singaporean and a visitor from China, even if they share similar facial features. Singaporeans move with a relaxed pace suited to the heat. Their clothes are functional and minimal. Their overall look is clean, simple, and built for daily life, not runway attention. So yes, someone may look Chinese at first glance, but the clothing, the comfort-based styling, and the calm presentation reveal something else entirely. Their appearance speaks Singaporean long before they ever say a word. Chapter 2. Same Roots, Different Identity. It is true that Singapore has a Chinese majority. Around 3 out of every 4 Singaporeans are ethnically Chinese, and most of their ancestors came from southern China many generations ago. They arrived as traders, laborers, shopkeepers, and seafarers long before Singapore became the modern, high-tech nation we see today. Their roots trace back to places like Fujian, Guangdong, and Hainan, but their identity did not remain frozen in time. It grew into something entirely new. This is where the confusion often begins. People see the Chinese majority and assume Singapore is simply another Chinese society. But nationality and culture do not work that way. A Singaporean may look Chinese, but their national identity is shaped by a completely different history and a different environment. Being Singaporean is not defined by race, by skin tone, or by the language spoken at home. It is defined by a shared culture, a shared way of life, and a shared sense of belonging to one nation. A simple image explains it well. Imagine China as a large tree. The Chinese communities around the world are branches from that tree. They all come from the same roots, but each branch grew under different weather, different soil, and different surroundings. Singaporeans with Chinese ancestry are one of those branches. They develop their own style, their own habits, and their own worldview. What makes Singapore even more unique is that its culture was never built by one group alone. It grew from the interactions of 3 major communities: Chinese, Malays, and Indians. Each group added its own traditions, languages, and flavors. Over time, these influences blended so deeply that the final result was something no single culture could claim. It became distinctly Singaporean. So asking if Singaporeans are Chinese is like asking if modern pizza tastes the same everywhere. It may share a birthplace, but every country reshapes it into its own version. Singapore did the same with its Chinese heritage. Same roots, yes, but an entirely different identity. Chapter 3, Language and How They Speak. One of the easiest ways to tell the difference between a Singaporean and someone from mainland China is through the way they speak. Language in Singapore is not just communication. It is a blend of cultures, a daily mix that reflects the country's multicultural roots. And this alone sets Singaporeans apart instantly. If someone uses WeChat for everything, from payments to messaging, you can safely guess they are likely from China. If their Mandarin carries a strong northern accent, the kind you hear in Beijing or Tianjin, that is another clear sign. Mainland Mandarin tends to be heavier, rounder, and more expressive. Singaporean Mandarin, on the other hand, sounds lighter. The words move faster. The tone sits somewhere between casual and precise. But the biggest difference is how effortlessly Singaporeans switch languages mid-sentence. It is natural for them. They grow up hearing English, Singlish, Mandarin, Malay, Tamil, and various dialects around them. So switching becomes part of their rhythm. One moment they speak English, the next moment they add Singlish. Then they throw in a Mandarin phrase, then they jump back to English without blinking. This constant mixing is something only Singaporeans do, and it is why their speech feels unique. A common sentence might sound like, "You eat already or not, later, very late, you regret, ah." It is English, but not quite. It is Mandarin influenced, but not exactly. It is Singlish, the language of everyday Singapore life. The rhythm is quick. The confidence is smooth. The flow is unmistakably local. So even if someone looks Chinese at first glance, their way of speaking reveals the truth. The mixture, the switching, the easy blending of languages all point to one thing. They are not just Chinese. They are Singaporean. Chapter 4, Behavior and Body Language. Another major difference between Singaporeans and people from mainland China appears in the way they behave. Body language, tone, and social habits reveal cultural roots long before anyone says where they are from. And here the contrast is clear. Mainland Chinese behavior is often louder and more expressive. Conversations move quickly, emotions rise and fall openly, and hand gestures come naturally. It is a cultural style shaped by large crowds, busy markets, and fast-moving cities. People speak across tables, call out to friends from a distance, and express themselves with confidence and volume. Singaporeans are different. Their behavior is shaped by a culture that values order, calmness, and social harmony. They generally keep their tone steady, not loud, not dramatic. Speech is controlled and polite, especially in public spaces. Even disagreement is expressed with measured words rather than raised voices. Singaporeans also follow unspoken social rules very closely. They line up quietly. They wait patiently for their turn. They do not rush forward or cut cues. They avoid shouting across a room, not because they are shy, but because the culture expects consideration for everyone around them. This creates a softer, more controlled atmosphere in daily life. You can see this difference in small moments. On public transport, Singaporeans tend to speak gently. In food courts, they move in an orderly manner. In malls, they walk calmly, even when the crowd is large. There is a sense of shared public space, and people adjust their behavior to keep it peaceful. These habits show something important. Behavior is not determined by race or ancestry. It is shaped by environment, society, and national identity. Two people may look similar, but the way they move, speak, and interact will quietly reveal where they come from. This difference in rhythm, tone, and body language makes one thing clear. Singaporeans may share Chinese ancestry, but their behavior reflects something entirely different. It reflects Singapore. Chapter 5, Food in Daily Life. Food is one of the clearest ways to see the difference between someone from mainland China and someone who is Singaporean. Eating habits reveal culture, comfort, and daily rhythm. And in Singapore, that rhythm is unmistakably unique. If a person insists on hot pot every week, complete with special Chinese dipping sauces, Sichuan pepper oils, or northern-style broths, there is a good chance they are from China. Hot pot culture is deeply rooted in Chinese cities, and many Chinese visitors carry those food traditions with them wherever they go. Singaporeans enjoy hot pot too, but their cravings stretch far beyond one cuisine. Their taste is shaped by the country's multicultural heritage, and this creates a style very different from mainland Chinese food preferences. Singaporeans adore hawker food, the everyday dishes found in open-air food centers across the country. These meals are affordable, flavorful, and uniquely Singaporean. Hokkien mee with its smoky noodles, laksa with its spicy coconut broth, char kway teow, rich and stir-fried, and of course, chicken rice, simple yet deeply beloved. These dishes may have Chinese roots, but they evolved under Singapore's flavor, ingredients, and history. They are not mainland Chinese recipes. They are Singaporean originals. The Singaporean eating pattern also tells its own story. A person might eat roti prata for breakfast, Chinese noodles for lunch, and nasi lemak for dinner without thinking twice. This mix of Indian, Chinese, and Malay dishes in one day is normal in Singapore. In mainland China, it is not. Daily life works the same way. Singaporeans move between different cultures every single day. They shop in Indian stores, eat in Malay stalls, speak English at work, order coffee in Hokkien dialect terms, and enjoy Chinese-style meals for supper. Food in Singapore does more than feed. It reflects the country's identity. It is a blend, a mixture, a multicultural story told on a plate, and that story is not Chinese. It is Singaporean. Chapter 6. The way they carry themselves. Another clear difference appears in the small habits people rarely notice at first. The apps they use, the way they shop, how they walk through a city. These everyday behaviors reveal more about a person's background than looks ever could. If someone relies heavily on WeChat Pay, Taobao, Alipay, or Chinese streaming platforms, they are most likely from mainland China. These apps are deeply woven into daily life in China, where people use them for everything from chatting to shopping to paying bills. When a person's entire digital life revolves around Chinese platforms, it is a strong cultural clue. Singaporeans live differently. Their digital habits are a mix of global tools and local convenience. They use WhatsApp for almost all communication. They send money through PayNow. They book rides and food through Grab. Their lives run on apps designed for Southeast Asia, not China, and these choices reflect the environment they grew up in. Style and movement reveal another layer. Chinese shoppers often enjoy bold luxury fashion. Designer bags, high-profile sneakers, and eye-catching accessories are common even for casual outings. Luxury culture is part of the excitement and pride of big city life in China. Singaporeans lean toward comfort and practicality. A simple bag, light clothing, slip-on shoes. Unless it is a wedding, event, or celebration, most Singaporeans prefer a low-key look. They do not dress to attract attention. They dress to move comfortably through heat and humidity. Tourist behavior also sets the two groups apart. Chinese visitors take photos everywhere, capturing buildings, food, signs, and even regular streets because everything feels new and exciting. Singaporeans walk past the same scenery without a second glance. To them, it is everyday life, nothing unusual. These tiny actions may seem small, but together they paint a clear picture. A person's habits, choices, and daily preferences quietly reveal their cultural background. And in Singapore, these subtle differences show that even when someone looks Chinese, the way they carry themselves tells a different truth. They are Singaporean. Chapter 7. Identity and Nationality. This is the part that brings everything together. The confusion between Chinese and Singaporean Chinese often happens because people mix up ethnicity with nationality. But these two things are not the same. Being Chinese refers to your ethnic roots, the ancestry you inherited. Being Singaporean refers to your national identity, the culture you grew up in, and the society that shaped your worldview. A person can be Chinese by race, yet fully Singaporean in mindset, habits, and lifestyle. This is exactly what you see in Singapore. Singaporean Chinese are not the same as mainland Chinese, even though they share distant roots. They grew up in different environments. They learned different values. Their daily experiences were shaped by a country built on multicultural coexistence. Singapore's identity was never formed by one community alone. It was shaped by Chinese, Malays, Indians, and many others who arrived over generations. These groups lived side by side, worked together, ate together, shared traditions, and adapted to one another. Over time, these interactions created something new, a national identity that belongs to everyone in the country, no matter their race. This is why you will never hear a Singaporean define themselves by ethnicity first. They do not say, "I am Chinese" as their primary identity. They say, "I am Singaporean." The culture they carry, the way they speak, the way they behave, the foods they love, and the values they practice all reflect this shared national identity. So while many Singaporeans may look Chinese, their identity is not tied to China. It is tied to Singapore. Their loyalty, upbringing, social habits, and worldview belong to this small, modern, multicultural nation. Identity comes from the life you live, not the race you inherit. And that is why Singaporean Chinese are a category of their own, shaped by the same roots but grown into a completely different identity. Chapter 8. So, are Singaporeans Chinese? This is the question everyone starts with, and by now the answer should feel much clearer. Yes, many Singaporeans are ethnically Chinese. Their ancestors came from different regions of China generations ago. But ethnicity alone does not define identity, culture, or nationality. Singaporeans are Singaporean. Their culture is not China's culture. Their social rules, their public behavior, their education system, their values, and their everyday habits come from Singapore, not China. The festivals they celebrate, the food they grew up eating, the languages they switch between, and the multicultural environment that surrounds them all shape a completely different way of life. Their government is also not China's government. Singapore runs on its own political system, its own laws, and its own national priorities. This creates a society that thinks differently, behaves differently, and operates differently from mainland China. Even their daily habits tell a separate story. The apps they use, the cues they form, the calmness in public spaces, and the multicultural food they enjoy all have nothing to do with mainland Chinese lifestyles. These habits were shaped by Singapore's unique mix of cultures and its emphasis on order, efficiency, and harmony. So while Chinese Singaporeans may share ancestry with people from China, they do not share the same cultural experience. They are as different as Chinese Americans are from people in Beijing or Shanghai. Same roots, different growth. Singaporean identity is something formed, not inherited. It comes from the environment, the community, and the country they call home. That is why Singaporean Chinese stand apart as their own group, shaped by a multicultural nation that blends Chinese, Malay, Indian, and Western influences into something that exists nowhere else. In the end, the answer is simple. Ethnicity may be Chinese, but identity, behavior, culture, lifestyle, all of that is purely, unmistakably Singaporean. Conclusion. So are Singaporeans Chinese? The honest answer is this: only in ethnicity. If you look purely at ancestry, many Singaporeans have Chinese roots. But everything that truly shapes a person's identity tells a different story. Their lifestyle, their culture, their behavior, the way they speak, the food they love, and the values they live by are not Chinese in the mainland sense. They are something entirely different, something shaped by a unique environment. Singaporeans are Singaporean. They are the product of a nation built on diversity, where Chinese, Malay, Indian, and many other communities came together to form one shared identity. This identity is not tied to one race. It is tied to the country itself, and it shows in every part of daily life, in the calm way they speak, in the mixed languages they use, in the hawker food they adore, in the orderly behavior you see in public spaces, in the blend of traditions that live side by side. Singaporeans carry a mix of histories and cultures, but they move through the world with one voice and one national confidence. That is why when you meet a Singaporean, you are not meeting someone who is simply Chinese. You are meeting someone shaped by a multicultural nation with its own rhythm, values, and identity. If you ever visit Singapore, take a moment. Look closely. Listen to how people speak. Watch how they interact. Taste what they eat. You will notice the difference immediately. And that difference, that uniqueness, is what makes Singapore truly special.